everybody, what's up? Welcome, my name is Amanda. Thank you so much for joining me and happy Valentine's Day. In honor of Valentine's Day and love, I thought that would be super fun to go through 14 plants in my collection that are easy to love. So if that's something that you're interested in, if you're looking for easy, lovable plants, stay tuned and let's go ahead and start off with the first one right here behind me. This one right here is my Monstera Esqueleto. And this plant, oh my gosh, I feel like you could put this thing through the ringer and it would still just be so beautiful and gorgeous. I did recently just do a chop on this one, so it's a little bit smaller than it has been. Previously, it used to be over in this back corner behind my bag bow cabinets, but I wanted to bring it out front and center and show off just how beautiful it is. I have a new leaf that's getting ready to unfurl here. But yes, Monstera Esqueleto, very easy to grow. I have mine in a self-watering setup in Leca. Okay, moving on from my Monstera Esqueleto, I'm still gonna leave it so you can just see how beautiful and lush it is. It took me a while to track down this plant and to grow it out, so I'm really proud of this one. But anytime anybody comes in here, they're like, oh my gosh, what is that plant? So if you're looking for an easy statement, this guy right here. The next one that I feel like is super easy to love is a very tried and true, I feel like, among the majority of people in the houseplant community, and that is going to be a pothos plant. So this one I do have growing up on a pole. I started it down here when the leaves were a little bit smaller and it started to increase in size. This is a pothos snow queen, so the variegation is very vibrant on this. I personally chose to have this on a pole just because I really want to have like a huge leaf on here. I think they're so cool. And if I could get this to fenestrate, oh my gosh, I would be blown away at my planting skills. But they can be neglected, they can be overloved, and 90% of the time, they will survive through it. Okay, the next one on my list, I feel like is still very loved, but maybe it's been forgotten about in the houseplant community, but that is going to be a Philodendron Florida Beauty. Now, I absolutely love this plant. Now, it took me a very, very long time to track this plant down. It just was not available locally, and it wasn't until I was able to find this from somebody in like a plant trade where I was able to pick it up. But I grew this from 2 cuttings that are down here at the bottom. I have it on a medium thickly pole, and it is just so easy. I have it in high light. Putting it on a pole, I feel like definitely helps. I don't know how well you're gonna see all the roots that are in here, but I think being able to get those micronutrients inside of the aerial roots helps just keep this super bouncy and full and lush. But it's very easy care for a highly variegated specimen. So if you're looking for something that's variegated, I don't know if these have gone away in plant style, but I feel like this is a plant that I will always have in my collection. The newest leaf right here is still hardening off. That's why this variegation is kind of a greeny color instead of this yellow. That's a fun thing about this plant is the variegation is called Polaroid. So as it comes out, the leaf has to fully harden off for that variegation to come all the way through. So it's really fun. You'll get like a general outline of where the variegation is going to be on the leaves, but you won't know how vibrant and how beautiful it's going to be until it fully hardens off and matures and a new leaf is on the way. But yes, Philodendron Florida Beauty, highly, highly recommend. Okay, next up is another pole, but I promise you not all of the plants that are easier on poles. We're just over here next to my moss poles, so I'm gonna get those ones out of the way first. But the next one that I would highly recommend to anyone is a Philodendron Jose Bono. So this also has really beautiful variegation. This one can thrive in neglectful situations. It also does well in multiple different lighting conditions. So if maybe you don't have, the right supplemental lighting throughout winter and it has to get a little bit lower light because you don't want grow lights or whatever the situation is, you choosing not to do that, it will still thrive, still do very well. The growth that continues to come out will probably be less variegated and a little bit smaller, but once you put it back in the spring and summer with higher light, it will pop back up. But it is just such a show-stopping plant. I love this one so much. This plant does not have to be on a moss pole if you don't like the aesthetic of that or you feel like they're too much work. I feel in my care though that having it on a moss pole actually makes it a lot easier to care for, where I'm just watering this plant when the moss becomes dry, like it is right now. It makes it this plant is getting enough water for these huge leaves. So even though these leaves are thin, they still are a very large space. So the amount of water that this plant can uptake is pretty significant, but watering it through the moss pole instead of through the soil, for me, it works as a way to avoid like potentially overwatering and killing your plant by rot, is because all of those aerial roots will suck up the nutrients, and then anything that drips out will get to the bottom of the soil. But yes, philodendron, Jose Bono, love her. Maybe her name should be Josephina. Okay, this is the last moss pole that I'll show you, and then we'll move on to my other plants. So this one is a Syngonium frosted heart. Now I know a lot of people seem to be over Syngonium, but I love them. I do feel like there is a time and a place for Syngonium in your collection, and if this is a plant that you're collecting, they do take up a lot of like shelf space, because normally they're bushier, they're not like trailing or whatever. So keep that in mind. But this plant is so much fun. It really does look like a cute little heart. So I couldn't leave it out for Valentine's Day, but it's such easy care. I could not water this for like a week. If I wanted to neglect it, it would pop right back up. It doesn't really ask me for anything. Like, it's not very dramatic when it is being neglected. It just sits there and waits for your attention. It's kind of like a little puppy, this plant. But yes, I love it. It's super beautiful. I love how like compact and lush this plant is. But if you are looking for a Syngonium, or you want to downsize your Syngonium collection, I would recommend getting or keeping this one. This plant I am using as an example to represent a category. So when it comes to thin leafed Hoyas, so anything that has just a really like delicate leaf, some other ones are going to be Polynura is a thin leaf Hoya, or the Leucantha that I showed in my plant haul video. Those are all thinner leaf Hoyas. And when a Hoya has a thinner leaf, it can't retain as much water. So I do feel like they are a little bit needier, but Multiflora Splash Wonderfill, I believe, is the Multiflora Wonderfill Splash. I think is the full name. I'll put it up on the screen though. But for a thin leaf Hoya, that is very just beautifully variegated with the splashy. It's really silver. It's low maintenance, and honestly, this plant will take the amount of water that you want to give it. I do traditionally water my Hoyas twice a week, just because my environment is very dry. But this one, if I decided to go on a 5-day vacation, this one would be able to hang the whole time that I was gone with no fuss. So if you're looking for a thin leaf Hoya, or you really have your eye on a multiflora, I would recommend the Wonderful version, just because it does seem to be a lot hardier for a thin leafed Hoya type. So this plant is so easy to love that I've completely forgotten the name. But this one I recently picked up from Beyond the Leaf, Inc. It's a new plant shop to me in Salt Lake City, but this is an air plant. And seriously, this plant needs absolutely nothing from me. And these little ringlets have been growing. It sits up in an east-facing window up here. I pop it in a sink with some chlorine-free water. And I think I've done it twice since I've had it, and it is so fun. My daughter absolutely loves this plant, but it's really interesting as well. I feel like it gives a good amount of texture, or just, I don't know, a design element to plants, because it doesn't look like typical foliage that you see. But I've never owned an air plant before. But this thing, very easy to love, low maintenance, and it looks absolutely stunning. For alocasias, I do have 2 of them right next to me. I pulled a couple out of my cabinet. But for alocasias, I feel like first and foremost, the easiest alocasia to love, in my opinion, is Alocasia caprea. So this one is a little baby corm. I have decided to start this plant over because my large Alocasia caprea, I could not get to stop flowering. So it just, the leaves kept dying off and these flowers kept coming out, and it was a never ending cycle. So I kept one of the corms and I'm starting over. But besides the flowering issue, this thing can handle any amount of neglect. If you're just getting into alocasia, or you're just getting into pon, this is a very hardy alocasia that I recommend trying a transition from soil to pon. They bounce back very quickly, and this one will let you know if it needs something. But it will be hardly ever, because they're just along for the ride. The second alocasia that I have is an Alocasia longiloba, or Alocasia lucifer. So this one is really, really cool. This one is a longiloba silver. I haven't really seen any silver on it yet. I assume they're talking about like the veination. It's still pretty immature, but this, for being a thin leaf, alocasia is very easygoing. I do have it set up in semi-hydro, but I mean, if you look at my water reservoir right here, there's like almost no water in this. It just chills in my cabinet. It's in higher light than I typically put alocasias under, and it is doing so well. I just received this leaf right here, and I already have a new one on the way. So if you want a very dramatic alocasia that's super easy to care for, highly recommend Alocasia Lucifer. So next up is a ficus. This is a Shiveriana Moonshine, but I do also have another ficus. These are really easy to care for, and I just feel like they're so underrated. This is a plant that will become very large if you don't prune it back, but just having something like this very subtly sitting on your windowsill in your kitchen, or having it on your desk at work will just, I don't know, really add a lot of color, and it just is very, very beautiful. I think these leaves, like this variegation specifically, it just looks like watercolor or like spackle paint. I don't know, they're just so pretty. I really think ficus are underrated genus, and I absolutely love them. They do need a lot of water though, is the only thing, but how much growth they give you in return makes them very easy to love. I have one more Syngonium, so I won't go too crazy with Syngonium, but this is a Syngonium red spot tricolor. And so if you want something that has a little bit more pop of color in your collection, this one is super easy to care for. Again, I know that people are moving away from Syngonium, but if you just want like something really fun, like look at how pink and green that is. I absolutely love this plant, but it needs seriously nothing from me. I've moved it to a taller planter because these plants don't like to be root bound. So as long as it has a space for its plants, for its roots to continue to like sprawl out and it doesn't feel suffocated, it's gonna just do you well. But it is so beautiful. Absolutely love the pink on this one. I did have it close to a light, so some of them got a little bleached, but I've moved it down on the bottom shelf of my Mills bow, and the new foliage that has came in is very vibrant. Number 12 on the list is an Anthurium crystallinum. Crystallinum? Unsure. But this one is seriously so easy. You could know absolutely nothing about plants, pick this up somewhere, and you would be able to care for it. You literally need to know nothing. You could give it any amount of water that you want, any type of water. I would not recommend that, but it just pushes out new growth so frequently. It has a really cool like heart-shaped leaf as well, which is why I thought that it should be in my Valentine's Day video. But it also has like, I don't know how well you're gonna see, but the veination on this is very sparkly, glitzy, whatever you wanna call it, but it is so beautiful. So when it hits the light just right over here on the top of my cabinet, it just looks like bedazzled. I don't know, but it's so stunning for something that is very simple and asks for nothing from me. And I do have another growth point coming out on the way, and this leaf right here just unfurled a couple weeks ago. So it's a fast grower as well. Number 13 on my easy plants to love is going to be an Anthurium pallidophorum. So if you've watched, if you watched my unboxing videos around Black Friday, I did place an order for this. This got lost in the mail or delayed in the mail, I'm not really sure, but it was in transit for 8 days and it did not do very well. So I have rehabbed it and I've gotten my first leaf in my care. It's very small, but I like that it's fully intact and it's not broken off like some of the other ones. But this plant just seems, in the short amount of time that I've had it, it just seems like it can handle anything. As long as you are consistent and it gets high light, this is an Anthurium that I feel like is very easy to care for. And even if you were to give it some improper care, it would be able to bounce back very quickly. So if you're looking for an entry-level Anthurium, I highly suggest the pallidophorum. Not only is it stunning with these long, narrow leaves, but the foliage is very beautiful. It's a deep green, and it's just really fun to see how big the next leaves are gonna be, even if they're really tiny like this one. And then number 14 on my list is another philodendron. This is a philodendron variegated heartleaf, and this one is, I can't even put into words how easy this one is. Sometimes I forget that I have this plant because it is up on the very top of my Mills bow tall cabinet, and I will go a few weeks without watering it. It doesn't necessarily get the best light. The light has started to get better since we're not moving in like the longest days of the year, but the foliage is so beautiful. These all down here are new leaves. I love when the new leaves come out and they have that beautiful peachy tone. But for getting no light, the variegation is very stable. It is so easy to care for if you do not have a philodendron. I'm trying to blank on the scientific name, but it's just a heartleaf philodendron. I'll put it up on the screen. It starts with an H, I believe. Or maybe I'm thinking heartleaf. I don't know. Anywho, it will be there for you. But this one is super awesome if you are in a gifting mood and you want to give somebody a little heart gift. Anybody in the world could care for this. So my sister will probably kill a cactus, but I could give her this plant with full confidence that she would be able to keep up with it. I hope that that was fun for you guys to see the 14 plants in my collection that I think are the easiest to love. I hope you have a very happy and safe Valentine's Day, whatever you're doing. And remember, regardless of your relationship situation, you are loved by you. And that is all that matters. Self-love is the start, my friends. Thank you so much for hanging out, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.